Good afternoon, Scott Baker.
Mikey, you and I are talking one-on-one right now, one-on-one. But a one-on-one can be many things. It can be many things, including a particular kind of basketball. But in the terms of today's field note, it's about the one that seems that we might either dread or would seem awkward. And it's the ones you have at work with someone who works for you or that is your leader. Mm-hmm. And why do we get clammy when we just think about it?
Yeah, it is a very popular question that comes up to our coaches on a regular basis. Probably one of the most frequent questions, like how do I conduct my one-on-ones, is something that many managers are thinking about constantly.
And do you think that they're like so eager about doing the one-on-ones, or it's because their organization says, you have 10 people that report to you. You need to have weekly one-on-ones with them. I'm not saying this is a bad idea. Right. I'm just saying that I think some of it is driven down and maybe the leaders of the people have to rethink their framework on the value of what's happening there, what can happen. But I think there's a whole lot going into this equation other than just saying, all right, everybody, we all have to do one-on-ones. Let's make them a little bit better. I think it's bigger than that.
They have become something that we put as a cornerstone in our management behavior. Like even in what we say and recommend is that the number of direct reports you have working for you should be based on how many one-on-ones you can actually
could possibly have. Right, exactly. Yeah. And if you have 50 direct reports, nobody's getting a one-on-one.
Yeah. Unless maybe you're doing it on a monthly basis, which we think that cadence just doesn't work. A weekly one-on-one.
Yeah, right.
And do you think that's true for most organizations when managers are thinking about what their one-on-ones are they immediately thinking, oh, that's a weekly cadence?
Well, here's the thing. And I'm not, and in fact, I do think that all of the content in this field note, which is really more about what should I discuss in the one-on-ones, it assumes that both either you are going to be the person meeting with a leader in your one-on-one or your leader is, but what are we going to talk about here? Like, what's the goal of how we structure this? And there's a little bit of an element of here's the best practice, 10 minutes, get the person, the direct report, to talk about anything they want to talk about. And then there's going to be some thoughts from the leader. And then we're going to kind of open the door, and that's going to the way it unfolds. But I don't know that even when you said, if I had 50 direct reports, you said, well, maybe monthly. Well, even if I did a half an hour, that's 25 hours.
Yeah.
That's like, it's not a full week of my work, right? But it's almost, if you're doing that. Now, you can make a case that would say, if you're spending, as some people should do, a little more time planning, maybe your day goes better. If you set aside an afternoon a week to plan next week, maybe your week gets more efficient, right? There's lots of people that are just filling their time with stuff that doesn't matter. Could be true in this as well. But I think that the bigger question here is to be thinking about the way that we're talking with the people on our teams, the way that we're talking with our leaders, and not so particularly that it comes down to a magic number on a clock, like a 30-minute.
Right. But that being said, we are recommending 30 minutes.
Yeah. Well, if you were saying where's a baseline, because then you can be like, well, I'm not doing this at all. Well, okay. Right. Well, what would happen if I tried this even once a month? If I had 7 direct reports and I could spend, 3 hours a month, kind of talking with those folks, would things get better? Yes.
Right. So we use kind of a broad term here that I'm a little bit afraid to say out loud when we say it, but the fact that we call it an ideal, like it's the one thing you bolded in the text. Here's the ideal structure, right? That's kind of a bold claim.
It is, yeah.
But it is our highest recommendation for folks as they're doing one-on-ones. Start this way. We think it's an ideal structure, not just for getting started, but even if you've done these for years, this is probably the best way to accomplish them. And for what reason do you think this is our ideal structure?
Well, I think that the tip is kind of in the lead of the field note, which is saying, well, what do seem to be best practices? If you look at people that are really good at this, or organizations that are really good at this, and you looked at like 12 different ways to do it, probably this is the middle ground of where the consensus would be. You should be at least spending a half an hour with somebody on your team, where it's not just in a meeting like this, and you're like, all right, anything that you need to discuss. Right. And I do see leaders in our organization doing that, even if they're not necessarily always carving out time to say, Scott, we're going to talk for 30 minutes. Go. Here's the clock and we're starting it. Right. And I think that if somebody said, all right, you have 10 minutes to kind of tell me about anything, and then I'm going to shift to telling you about things, and then we're going to talk about priorities and goals. I think you can do the 30 minutes and the 10 by 10 by 10, but it doesn't have to be, it can feel more organic. I think that would be the goal. Can you make it just sound, and I think this is the way in different organizations in the past, when I had teams of 10, 20, 30 people, 40 people reporting to me, I would try to have those kinds of conversations, but I didn't want to impose the feeling of an artificiality to it, because at the heart of it, it should still feel like a conversation.
Yes. And at the heart of it, which oftentimes is not what managers do. If you're my boss, if you're my manager, this one-on-one is for me. It's not for you.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people get that wrong in like the overall approach to the way that they treat. Like,
I'm going to drag in my direct report and pummel them with how great I am and my ideas and why they're off.
Well, I've been writing down things all week that I need to share with you, and so buckle up for 10 minutes.
Okay, here it comes.
Part of my 10 by 10 by 10 is just unloading on you all the feedback that I failed to give. And by the way, if you're waiting for once a week to give me feedback, you've wasted a week, right? Mm-hmm. For those learning opportunities to sink in on a daily, on an hourly basis, in real time, being able to talk to me. If you get into a pattern of just writing stuff down and saving up, it's going to make that one-on-one horrible for me.
Yeah.
And you've wasted, feel like I've missed out on being able to hear from you in real time.
Well, there are certainly plenty of people and all kinds of organizations where they feel they're not being heard, right? Sure. And that they do have things that they would like to share. Mm-hmm. We also find, and we actually have content in our platform around the fact that part of the magic of this is if you as a leader or a parent are rushing to say, okay, you don't have anything, they do have something. You just have to kind of sit in that moment for a little while. There's one example given where a dad and a son are in a car and he hits the childproof locks and is like, tell me what's really going on. No, you're locking me in the car again. And the dad's like, I want to hear it. Like, we're not getting out of here until I know what's really going on. Right. And so we don't want to lock the door on the people on our team when they come in to talk, but you need to be the kind of person that they can open up to.
Right.
And that there's going to be a true nature of a dialogos where there's I actually can be changed by what you bring to this meeting. I'm actually looking for insight. I actually want to know what your priorities are. I want to walk through a lot of these things with you. In fact, tomorrow's field notes even going to go into some fun directions on that.
So the strong behavioral recommendation I'm hearing in that is that if the first 10 minutes is about the direct report sharing with the manager what they need to say, if I just say a couple of light things after 2 minutes, it's probably best for you as a manager to continue to hem and haw and create a safe sounding environment for me to go ahead and share more. Instead of you moving into your second.
Hem and haw. That's your No, you just have to actually, you have to be a real person. And you can find a way to say, well, what's been going on over there? And I know you have that new person on the team. How are they doing? I know we were counting on that getting that contract, and that one didn't come through, but we did get that other one. That was
but right now you're getting into second 10-minute stuff.
But I'm asking you, I'm not giving you my feedback on it. I'm not getting into goals and priorities. I'm asking things about that I might know about. I'm not going to just be like, how's the family? Right. And where the person's like, I don't think you really care about my family. Right. Now, if you've gotten to the place where you've demonstrated that, where it's not just the thing that you pulled out of your pocket. But one of the things that I was going to point out is that you and I are talking, remotely. And now this idea that we have sometimes hybrid teams or work from home teams, or people aren't always with each other, that there used to be an element where you were around people all day long. You're whether the lunchroom, the water cooler, kind of in the hallway, right? And so it was easy for somebody on a team to kind of come over and go, what was the deal with that? Like, tell me more about what happened there. And you just got off the call, or you just got out of the meeting. There's a more natural fluidness to that. Now, does that mean that we say, okay, oh, great, I get to be on more Zooms this week because I'm going to schedule 30 minutes. Right. But if you're not scheduling any time, then you're just getting more and more disconnected, especially if you're on a hybrid team.
Right.
And you're losing. Now we have Slack, we have all kinds of other ways, and email and text messages to communicate, but none of that really replaces the power of a real conversation,
Right.
and that ability to create those moments with some predictability and some confidence in the person that you really are there rooting for my success.
Yes. So the fact that you've spent some time on camera, behind the camera and in front of the camera, I've spent some time on camera. We kind of know the way that our brains work to kind of break down the fact that you and I are talking right now, and we actually want to have and we don't want the fact that the performative nature of what we're doing right now
Sure.
to take over, because we want to have a real conversation. We want to
and
demonstrate a
Well,
conversation.
you know how I know that's happened? Because we were covering the content and I started to say some things that seemed to kind of pull away at the load-bearing structures of the very field note in a
Right.
way that you were like, I'm not sure about the direction that's going on here. I
Right,
don't know
right.
that you were disagreeing necessarily. Maybe you were, but you were like, wait, what do you? So we actually were probing into territory around the content of this field note that was maybe a little more unexpected in terms of what you were expecting me to say about
Yes.
here. We've got this ideal structure in this 30 minutes. I'm saying like all ideals,
Right.
there's a place and a direction you're heading to. It
Yes.
doesn't mean that if you have a 17-minute conversation, or instead of 1/2 hour, you talk to somebody about this, and then later you get together about that. We're moving toward just saying, have more and regular conversation.
Yes.
And conversation where you're listening, where you're engaging, where you're being changed and moved, and you're bringing your ideas, and maybe now you have better ideas.
Right.
I think that's what we'd all love to be a part of an organization like.
It's
But the
true.
fact that I think I made you nervous there,
No,
which is
no.
a good sign.
The nervous part for me is that there's a lot of people who don't have the experience that you and I have in speaking to a camera, knowing that they're performing, and also needing to really communicate through the camera. So
And listen,
in this
right,
in
yes,
this age of Zoom, it's a skill you have to develop in order to
For
not
sure.
not look at your camera, but look at
Yep.
you, right?
Right,
Because
correct.
because I will have the tendency to like stare at myself as we're going through stuff instead of looking at you. So I'm not getting the feedback that I
Right.
need.
Yeah.
If you're a manager who's now doing your one-on-ones by Zoom a lot, there
Yeah.
are dozens of ways that you are communicating your disinterest in people that don't organically occur when you're having a real face-to-face with people.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's a skill that you have to learn. It's a skill that you have to practice, and your brain is doing funny stuff to you. And so this notion of like how to do it, I mean, you bring up great points. This notion of how to do it in the Zoom world, it's pretty different than how to do it across a desk for
Yeah.
people.
Well, look, anybody can get an Elgato teleprompter for $250. I don't have one hooked up to this camera, but you can. It's not for reading words. It's for the mirrored projection, so I can look at the camera at you. Because right now, if somebody's watching us in Substack Live right now, or
Right.
they're watching on X, or they're watching on YouTube, or they watch later, or now they won't be able to see it if they're just listening in Apple Podcast. But imagine people on Apple Podcast if I were staring at you right now.
Right.
Now, if I stared at you the whole time, it would start to look weird. But if I'm actually looking at Mikey on my MacBook Pro screen like this, and I'm not looking, and people that would be looking on, so you were talking about this thing about this dynamic, but it's not a trivial thing. This is not just a charisma performance thing. It's that if you were sitting across me in a room and we're having that moment, the rare time when we haven't had a one-on-one in 3 months or whatever, and you finally are there, I want to know that you're there.
Right.
And the micro expressions on both parties become very important to what's happening in the dynamic of that, which
Yes.
most people are missing in lots of this. You watch, you just see people around a room having a meeting, and you see people nodding, or they'll lead in, or they'll raise a hand and be, what did you mean? You see on Zoom, hardly anybody. I just don't see very often people going, oh, how about that?
It's
Interesting.
because most of the time on Zoom, when it's 4 or 5 people, it's cover for me to be able to do other work.
Other work, exactly.
I can do.
Yeah.
So only 30% of my brain is waiting for a subject matter to come up that is relevant to me.
Oh, let me jump in.
Or to hear my name, right? But in terms of like actually listening the way that I would around a conference table, I just don't do it that way. We're training our brains to not pay attention in ways that are dangerous, especially when it comes to the skill that applies to running a one-on-one properly.
Yeah.
Like
right.
you need to buckle down and focus in and really listen. And if that means that you turn off your own self-facing camera completely, do it. You can do that inside of
You
Zoom.
can do that. That's
Yeah.
absolutely true. And look, we didn't even get to this, and I figured we would, but we didn't. I probably had pretty significant, serious conversations with most of my 5 kids. If you had your 6 kids and you said, I'm going to proportion just 30 minutes a week, and I'm going to structure as you talk to me for 10 minutes, then I'm going to kind of talk about what I think about that. It would need to be a little more fluid than that, but you should be having an ideal that you're going to have time when you really are listening and you really are letting that agenda be with that person.
Yes.
And we're so tempted. I know the leaders out there, you're like, okay, I'm going to listen for 10 minutes. I'm going to try to, and then you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And you that changes throughout your parenting career as well, because that moment for you is maybe being quiet during the time that you're still reading to your youngest daughter at night. And for a moment, you're just going to be quiet and let her talk for a little bit before you jump into the story. Right. But once you stop reading to your daughter at night, when she's in her late 30s or whatever that might be,
right, whenever that is,
the structure of that, of course, needs to change. Okay. So any part we've done this for a week now. I don't know that we have the opportunity even to do it for this weekend, but we want to continue to keep doing it. It's always going to be related to the field note of the day. And we love the fact that other people are joining in and listening as well and watching. And thank you.
Dynamite. All right. And in the future, we're probably going to do the weekend field notes and maybe record about them ahead of time. So they might not be live conversations, but that'll probably get kicked in here in a couple of weeks. So
I think we could record them and then post them as if they're live. So maybe there's some
that
fakery.
could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I believe in authenticity, but to be like, we could clearly and honestly say this looks like we're live.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Have a good weekend. Bye now.